let's see, we got Coromon, Palmon, Sunamon, Tokomon, Multimon, and Gatomon. I still need a Yokomon and a Bukomon. Try to get ones for representations of all of them, or at least all the original 8 Digimon, but we'll see about that at a later time. So this video is actually going to be a little bit of a kind of a, not a palate cleanser, but a little bit of an in-between when I finish up the, I just finished up the 8 Digidestin, the original 8 Digidestin, and then I'm going to do the next 4, which will be Davis, Yoli, Cody, and Ken. And then, the Willis and, the Mako and the rest of them from Digimon Adventure and Digimon Adventure Tri. That the miscellaneous Digimon Digidust are there, but this one is actually just going to be a video about how the original 3 or how the original 8 Digidestined were chosen. And we get to see this kind of in three different ways. The first version that we get in the actual series, we see this is when the 8 children return to the digital world for the first time, when Kari gets to be there for the first time in 1999. When they get back there, Kari ends up talking to this voice or this being that only she can hear. And she ends up getting possessed by this being. And this being, later on, we learn in Digimon Tri, we learn that this being is called homeostasis. In this one, it tells Tai that Kari will be fine. I just needed to borrow her, and I'll give her back when I'm done explaining this to you guys. Because I got to explain to you, I tried to, communicate with you when you first got here, but I couldn't because Kari's the only one that I was compatible with to be able to speak with you. So in that vein, we find out that homeostasis and Gennai, we have met Gennai already in the series. We met him just after they beat Devimon. They met him via hologram, and then they met him in person after they beat Edamon, and then just after Myotismon went to the real world and they needed to find a way to follow Myotismon. Gennai helps him, and he's an old man when we meet him. And Gennai, Gennai doesn't explain this to them. Well, Gennai kind of explains that, there's 7 of you now. There's supposed to be 8 of you. There's another one. You have to go back to the real world and find the other one. I don't know who it is. I'm like, dude, you literally could have told Tai that it's your sister. We know who it is. It's your sister. You just find her, tell her what's going on, find her Digivice, and then go and, find her partner Digimon. I can give you a hint as to who it is, but I don't know. It is left up for debate whether or not Gennai actually knew that Gatomon was Kari's partner Digimon, which I'll go over in this video as to why he could have known but maybe didn't know. And what we see in the episode, I think it's called the Greatest Clash or something like that. And what ends up happening in the episode is the homeostasis kind of shows them via projections of the past. It shows them the battle that Tai and the other 7 of them witnessed in the real world, that was between Big Agumon / Red Greymon and Parrotmon. And this is the battle that we kind of get to see in full scale in the Digimon movie, in the first one, where Kari and Tai, the Digi-Egg appeared out of their computer one night in 1995, and when Kari is still very young, and when Tai is still pretty young in and of itself, and they find the Digi-Egg, and then it hatches and it turns into the Coromon, and then it turns from the Botomon into Coromon into Big Agumon, and then Big Agumon then turns into Red Greymon after running around Heightened View Terrace, turns into Red Greymon in order to fight Parrotmon. And we see this play out in the movie. And then, it evolved all the way, it digivolved all the way up to Red Greymon in order to protect Tai and Kari. And we see during this battle, we see all these different moments where all of the different Digidestins see the fight. We see, Sora sees the fight, Mimi, Joe, TK, Matt, Izzy, all of them see this fight, and of course Kari and Tai are right in the middle of the battle, and Red Greymon is of course protecting them because they're his friends. And, you know, that automatically shows the loyalty that a Digimon will have to their Digi-Destined, even though Tai and Kari are technically not this Coralmon's, this Greymon's, this, you know, this Red Greymon's Digi-Destined. They're technically not his, but it already has that bond with them. We also see in the series, we know that a Digimon can Digivolve even by just being exposed to the light from the Digivice, which we see happen with Leomon being able to turn into Saber Leomon. When Mimi and Joe encounter him, you know, after this happens. But what ends up happening is Homeostasis explains to Tai and the rest of the group that night when, you know, we had sent Coralmon, we sent the Digi-Egg into the real world to try to find specific children. And, you know, we then analyzed each of you. And we see this in the episode, not in the movie, but in the episode, we see it that they had, like, scanned each of the kids. And, you know, it was scanning over them to try to determine, you know, these were the 8 of them. There were more than just 8 kids that saw what happened. But we see the 8 of them, they were the 8 of them that were chosen, that were either the most affected by this or whatever the case was. I don't know. But the 8 of them were the ones that were chosen. And it is also stated that the reason that they were chosen is because they each had something, a very strong characteristic inside of them, which is then what is developed into their crests, which are then, of course, used throughout the course of the first season. And then, of course, they get destroyed by Apocalypse at the end of the season, but it's also that the crests are stated to just be a way to harness what's inside of them, their power inside of them. You know, Tai has courage, Matt has friendship, Sora has love, Mimi has sincerity, Izzy has knowledge, Joe has reliability, TK has friendship, Kari has light, and I'm missing someone. Courage, friendship, love, sincerity, knowledge, reliability, hope, light. Okay, no, I got them all. I was like, wait a second, I missed one. Nope, I didn't. And we have that, and then of course we also find out that Ken has the crest of kindness, but that'll be gone over in Ken's video. But you know, each of the Digi-Destined have a crest, and of course they get their tags, and then they get their crest, and then of course they have their Digivices. And their Digivice was designed specifically to help them be able to go back and forth from the real world into the digital world, and then also to help them be able to connect with their Digimon as a way of helping harness their power, their inner power, same way that the crests are designed for, that the tags and crests are. And we see this, and Homeostasis explains, and via like flashback type stuff, we see that Gennai, a young version of Gennai, was actually involved in the development of these different, figuring out these new Digi-Destined. We learned that there were previous Digi-Destined that had been in the digital world at some point, but now they couldn't get them anymore, and they needed to get new Digi-Destined because there was going to be new threats coming in. And they were specifically designed to be able to, you know, Tai and his group, Digi-Destined, were designed to specifically be able to take down the Dark Masters. And of course, the Dark Masters are Metal Seedramon, Machine Dramon, Puppetmon, and Piedmon. I really don't care for any of them. I don't. I never did. I never cared for any of them as a kid. Admittedly, I would say out of all of my favorite Digimon villains that they had in the original season, not Devimon, technically Ogremon, but then Ogremon turns into like their ally, so not Ogremon. Like, I don't know, I never really cared for any of them. Edamon was annoying, and Myotismon was just horrible, so I don't care for any of the villains. Sometimes you like villains, sometimes you don't. I didn't care for the villains in Digimon. I mean, like, they were good villains, but I just, there weren't any that I specifically liked. Oh, I like this one so much more than this one. With like One Piece, you have like different villains, and it's like, oh, I very much like that one. Or like, I'm wearing a Star Wars shirt today. It's like, you just so many people like Kylo Ren and Darth Vader and everything. Or so many of the other villains that they had throughout the series, throughout the movies, and throughout the animated series that they've had. Um, but I never really cared for any specific Digimon villain in the original series, or well, uh, I kind of didn't mind the Devas in season 3 in Tamers, and in Frontier. Lucimon was kind of interesting in Frontier, and Cherubimon was interesting, but um, given what they show, but I'll be going over them much later when I get to those seasons. But the Tai and his group were specifically picked because the Dark Masters were going to rise again. They were slowly gaining power again, and they needed to have Digidestin ready to be able to fight them. And we find out that Gennai and Homeostasis were working together. They're kind of a duo group of working together. There's more than one Gennai. We learn throughout Digimon World Tour episodes in season 2 that there are multiple variations of Gennai that have like so many different names, and like they help the kids. But so we have Gennai there, and we find out that Gennai, that the Homeostasis and the Gennai, like his group, were Homeostasis is kind of like a guardian that's supposed to be in charge of trying to keep balance in the digital world. Kind of turns into a bit of an enemy in Digimon Tri, but I'll go over that at another time, specifically what we know about Homeostasis, beyond the fact that it likes to possess Kari. But Tai and his group are chosen, and we see all of their Digi-Eggs in this case. We see their Digi-Eggs and their crests and their Digivices are all together. And what happens is Piedmon, and I think Puppetmon might have been there too, but Piedmon attacks the lab where they are, and him and a bunch of his Digimon servants come in and start causing trouble, which is a bunch of these different machine type Digimon, some Guardramons and some other types that show up, and they're causing damage and destroying the lab. And Gennai hops inside one of them and like takes control of it, and he grabs all of the Digi-Eggs and the Digivices and the crests and everything. He grabs them all, and he tries flying off, but before he had jumped into the machine, Piedmon had put like this little black orb or something, like pushed it into Gennai's back, and that black orb actually is what makes Gennai age into an old man. Throughout the we see him as an old man at the beginning, and then we find out that, oh no, he's actually a young man. He was just like infected by something by Piedmon that made him turn into an old man. But what ends up happening is Gennai then flies away in the Guardramon, and has the eggs with him, and he's being chased by the Dark Masters and their other servants, trying to shoot him down, because of course if they can take out these specific Digi-Eggs, these specific Digivices and crests, if they can destroy them, if the Dark Masters have the ability to destroy them, then that just sets the Homeostasis and Gennai back even more, because now they have to start their research over again, or they have to try to refine the kids, or whatever the case may be. And what ends up happening is Gennai then, throughout the course of flying to escape, he ends up dropping one of the eggs, and like all the and like this is being played out for like the Digidestin and their Digimon to see, and the Digi-Egg falls, and of course we know that that's Gatomon's Digi-Egg because she was separated from the others, and Gatomon just has this sad line of kind of like, I always wondered how I ended up alone, and Biomon's just like, don't worry about that. What matters is we're together now. And that just makes Gatomon happy. And it's just like, it's kind of like reassuring. It like reassures to Gatomon. It's like, no, you are part of our family now. We have no intention of abandoning you again. It was an accident. You weren't supposed to be separated from us. And then what ends up happening from there is, of course, Gennai flies to File Island. And then he, leaves the Digi-Eggs there. And he hides the crests. We know that he takes the tags and crests and he hides them. And then the Digivices kind of seem to stay with the baby Digimon once they hatch, and then when it came time for in like 2009 or 1999 in the real world, in that time frame, it was then time for Tai and the others to come to the digital world, and that's when the giant space wormhole opens up at the camp, and they get sucked into it, and then they get their Digivices, and then they land in the digital world, and they each meet their Digimon, and which is adorable to watch. But what we see happen is it's implied that the Digimon each knew that they were waiting for someone, which we also which we kind of find out at the beginning, way in the beginning of the series, that each of the Digimon are like, we've been waiting for you for so long. You're the ones that we have been waiting for. And, when we find out from Gatomon later on, when she's like reminiscing with Wizardmon, she's always like, I always felt like I was searching for someone. Like I was missing someone. Like there was someone I was supposed to go and find. And I didn't know who that was. And that's that drive for her to go and try to find Kari, of course. And unfortunately, she finds Myotismon, and Myotismon is horrid to Gatomon, to Salamon and Gatomon. And she unfortunately kind of goes through hell. Gatomon literally goes through hell, like trying to, survive around Myotismon to come out on the other side and find Kari and literally turn into an angel. Yeah, I love that. I love Gatomon. Out of the original 8, she is my favorite Digimon. Although they do make, I think Tai has made jokes about Gatomon like clawing the furniture. And then like Gatomon's like, no, that wasn't me, that was your cat. Like, sure it was. But we find out that these 8 children had something inside of them that was specifically what Homeostasis and Gennai knew would be good to go up against Piedmon, go up against the Dark Masters, and then of course later go up against Devimon, and then Myotismon and Etamon, and then the Dark Masters, and then Apocalypmon. And we see each of the kids finding what it is that activating their crest throughout the whole of the series. We see this happen with each of the kids, with Tai being first and then TK being last, and all the others happening in the middle. And we know that there's this draw between the Digidestined and their Digimon, because these Digimon were specifically picked to a degree to be with them. This specific Coralmon was going to be the perfect one to be around Tai. This specific Palmon, Tanamon, was Tanamon, not Palmon, turns into Palmon, would be the specific one that would be best for Mimi. Sunamon would be the specific one that would be best for Matt. Tokomon would be the specific one best for TK. Multimon, the specific one that is best for Izzy. Gatomon, the specific one that is best for, Sora, or for Kari. Bukamon, as Gomamon is the perfect one for Joe, and, Beelmon, Yokomon is the perfect one for, Sora. And throughout the course of the series, we see this. And, Homeostasis explains that, you were the 8 that we needed, and you are able to connect with your crest and connect with your Digimon and draw on that power. And that was what we needed. And you've done so well with beating Devimon, and then Etamon, and Myotismon, and then now you're fighting the Dark Masters, and that you need to destroy the Dark Masters in order to help return harmony to the digital world. And that the Digidestined, of course, they achieve this. They do destroy all 4 of the Dark Masters, and then they destroy Apocalypmon. And then, of course, we find out that at one point in between, in one of the summers, in between the end of the original series and the beginning of the second season, one of the summers in that timeline, that they had to return to the digital world. Gennai called them there, and they had to each give up their crests in order to, help revitalize the barrier to protect the digital world. And Homeostasis is kind of supposed to be in charge of this barrier, and Gennai is kind of there to help guide the Digidestined. Jedi at some point does get corrupted, and that's in a Digimon Tri, which I will go over at another point, but he does seem to get better because we see him in Digimon The Last Evolution, or 2020, whatever you want to call it, The Last Evolution. And we see him there, and he's back to normal. So there's kind of like, okay, well, he got better, and then he's now he's good again. And Jedi will get his own video at some point, but he kind of goes through that whole version, unfortunately, of having to have that whole problem there. But so it's like that whole and like we do find out later that any kid has the potential to be a Digidestined. We see this with in the second season. At the end of the season, we find out that Cody's dad and Oikawa, who were best friends, that they had their own Digimon and that they were drawn to the digital world. And but they couldn't, they still knew about the digital world and they wanted to go there, but they never quite got the ability to. They could still communicate with their Digimon, but it wasn't the same. And then we find out that there were, there's this other group of original Digidestineds that went to the digital world that was before Tai and his group. We learn about them in Digimon Adventure Tri, and actually Diego Nishijima and Maki, I think it's Maki Himakawa, they're the two agents that deal with the kids the most, but those two actually were part of the original group of Digidestins that had been in the digital world way back when. And we learn this in Digimon Adventure Tri, and they will get their own video later on after I finish with like Davis and his group and some of the other miscellaneous. They'll be in some of the miscellaneous ones. But Tai and his group, they were the ones that were specifically chosen to deal with these Dark Masters, this incarnation of the Dark Masters. And of course, Digimon have the ability to, of course, be reincarnated again and again and again, as long as their data is not destroyed. I guess by that logic, wouldn't it be smarter to, like, whenever the Dark Masters get destroyed, because the Digimon seem to still have their memories of being the Dark Master or of being that evil Digimon, and unless they decide that they want to change, that's not going to happen. So wouldn't, it's kind of like it is kind of the cycle of regeneration to a degree, of reincarnation, I should say, that is kind of there when it comes to like, Buddhist and, Hinduist philosophy of that, that reincarnation of, you did this in your first life, and then this is where you ended up, and now you're going to do this, and now you get this life and this life, and until you either get it right or until you reach a certain level of goodness or harmony or balance or whatever, that you're just going to keep going and going. But if you had like a really, really bad life, one life, as in like you were a super horrible bad person, then you end up getting reincarnated like extremely low in the totem pole or extremely low down in like the caste system. But if you had like a really, really good life, then, when you get to your next life, then you might be further up in society, type of thing. That was a way of like moving up and down in society based on how you had been in your last life. And that concept isn't entirely only in like Hinduism and Buddhism. In Egyptian mythology, there's when you died in the Egyptian mythology, you would end up before, I think it was Anubis, was the god of the dead, and he had this little dog, ugly looking thing that like what would happen is, when you reached the afterlife, when you reached, Anubis in the underworld, he would take your heart, not like, okay, here's your heart. Well, they do that in Once Upon a Time, where like so many of the like Wicked Queen and Rumple have the ability to like reach in and pull out your heart, and then it's just like this beating red heart, and that's kind of disturbing. But then of course if they crush your heart, then it kills you. But if they have your heart, they can control you. But what happens in Egyptian mythology is Anubis takes your heart and he puts it on this scale, and on the other side is a feather. And if your heart is lighter than the feather, if your heart is lighter than the feather, then you had a good life, you were a good person, and you get to move on to the afterlife, where you get to have, luxury and comfort and everything. But if your heart was, the same, then if it was the same weight as the feather, then you were sent back into your, back to live again and try to do it over again and try to be a better person. But if your heart weighed more than the feather, then it meant that you had done horrible things, horrible deeds, been a horrible person. And then your heart was then fed to like Anubis's little pet thing. And, that's, and then you're just dead. You're just dead. You don't get a second chance or a third chance or whatever. You're just dead. So that concept is there. And I think there was that same concept, well, not quite the same concept, but like a similar concept in Greek and Roman mythology when you end up in hell, in Hades, in a Tartarus area, that, there were the ones who, there were there was the really, really good people who, like the heroes from mythology that were, the heroes or the great kings or the great queens or whatever from mythology, the people that had done amazing and good things were sent off to, these, I can never remember if it's the fields of Asphodel or Elysian or whatever it is, but they go off into basically like the heaven version of place where it's like everything is good and there's plenty and there's comfort and everybody's happy and you got to go there. Or you're one of the horrible people, then you're sent into Tartarus to be tortured for all time. There's Sisyphus down there who's pushing his rock up the hill. That's the Sisyphean task. That's an impossible task. He can't push this rock all the way up the hill. There's all these other people that are being tortured because they had been horrible people. They'd killed or they'd done all these horrible things for no reason. So there's those people, and then there's like the everyday type of people who are just in like this field or this just plain area where they don't remember who they were. They didn't do bad. They didn't do good. They were just normal. And they just, they just wander. And sometimes those souls get the ability to like be cleansed and sent back, and they get to do it again if they choose and try to be better, or I guess in some cases worse. You get like your memory erased, and then you go and do it. So, and then you get like sent back. So it's that type of cleansing type of a thing. Other mythologies have done similar things where you get like a second chance or a third chance or something like that, where you get reincarnated as a new person. Whatever the case may be, and you get the chance to do it again. And with Digimon, I went way off topic. Yeah, I know, I went way off topic in regards to, well, this is how you become, how these original ones are picked, and, I'm talking about reincarnation, so, just whatever. But, so we have, Tai and his group were picked, and they had something in them that was special. But, how did I get I was talking about, well, then why don't they just like kill the Dark Masters when they're reincarnated as Digi-Eggs and just like smash the Digi-Eggs so they're not a threat anymore? But then it's like, well, then something else will come along that might be worse than the Dark Masters. Okay. I guess with the Dark Masters, at least it's an evil as opposed to an evil you don't know. Kind of. Okay, whatever. But so we have the Dark Masters there and everything, but like, Tai and his group were picked, and of course when we get to Davis and his group, and I'll kind of go over this specifically for each of them in their video, but like I mentioned for the original 8 that at one point when like Myotismon is like gathering like all of these families and everything at the at the TV station or the community center or whatever whatever event center or whatever it was where he had them. One of the families that got taken there was Davis and his family, and they are taken there. And Davis, is trying to protect his mom and his dad and his sister, even as a kid. And that's kind of like it's hinted that like the homeostasis was watching even then. Like maybe that's when they picked Davis, and then like after they defeat Myotismon and like the rifts start opening up in the sky. There's like a plane that almost crashes, but Sora and Garudamon are able to save the plane and make it land safely. And I think it was hinted that like Cody and his mom and his grandfather were on that plane. And like that was kind of something, that's like when Cody was picked. And then in the Digimon movie, in the three-parter movie that they had for the original one, when we see all the kids sending in emails and everything, one of the kids is actually Yoli from, it's Yoli that later on ends up being a Digidestined, and then it's kind of hinted that maybe she was one of the ones that was picked from that round. Out of all of those kids that were sending in emails to get a whole, to like send encouragement to, Tai and Izzy and, what ended up being Omnimon against Diaboromon. So we know how those three were kind of picked. I don't remember if we find out exactly how Ken was picked, but there was like, there's that thing in there that kind of, that spark within him that was like his kindness, was there. And, like Davis, we know that he has, courage and friendship are like his two main things. And then, Yoli has love and sincerity, and Cody has knowledge and reliability. And like, those are kind of like their main traits. Doesn't mean that like Davis can't have love, or that Davis can't have reliability, or that like Cody can't have courage, or Yoli can't have friendship. It's just those were like with Tai and his group. It's not like Tai is the only one in that group that has courage, or that Sora's, or that like Izzy's the only one in that group that's smart. It's, this is their overwhelming trait, and they still have all these others because it's stated when they get digitized by, or when they get kind of disintegrated by Apocalypse, and they're like kind of, their Digimon help them rally and everything. It's kind of, they kind of do the whole thing of, these aren't just, TK's not, it's not just my hope that I have, it's everybody's hopes. And, Tai, it's not just my courage, it's all of our courage. Matt, it's not just my friendship, it's all of our friendship. And like, all that, it's like, Sora, my love is everybody's love. And Kari, my light is everybody's light. It's, you bring that out in others as well. And that's why you have that specific crest. Or in the case of, like the Digiarmor eggs, it's, that's there for that. And for Ken had the crest of kindness. And, as the Digimon Emperor, no, he was not kind. But we find out from Wormmon that Ken had once been extremely kind and extremely good and extremely gentle. And, we find out, of course, that Ken was manipulated, which we'll go over in Ken's video. But we also learn that we see Ken later on, once he's no longer being the Digimon Emperor, when he gets to be himself again, when he's not being manipulated anymore. He tries to be very kind to the rest of the Digidestined, kind to the digital world, and trying to redeem himself. And that does bring out kindness more in the other Digidestined, in Davis and his group. And they're able to help, they bring that kindness out in each other. And, and it helps Ken more. And it's that whole concept of, it's not just what's in you, it's what's with everybody else as well that's around you. And I like that concept. I very much like that concept when it comes to Digimon. I've always enjoyed that concept. That it's not just what's inside of you that can help with this power. It's what you can help bring out in others. It's like, what's your strongest trait that you can help bring out in others? And, it may not be one of these specific crests. It might be something else that's inside of you. It's not like, it's like there might be other crests that they thought of and like scrapped the idea for, but maybe there's, there's like, and then of course they have the Digi Eggs of like Miracles. What was it? Miracles and something else that are like the two golden Digi Eggs. But then there's like these other, there's like other traits, like, there's, artistic that might have been a trait that maybe you had that you brought out with others, or there's like, something else that was your trait, I don't know where that went. I don't know. I ramble. Yeah, brain fun. So that's what we have for this video. I might do another one kind of like this about like something else like for the original group, but then I'll be going into the Davis and Yoli and Cody and Ken videos for the Digimon series. I don't know specifically when I'll get to that. I've got, as I said, I backlogged videos, so we'll see what happens with that. And I think that's what we've got. So I thank you very much for watching. I might also just have some other, like the Pokemon videos or some other Attack on Titan videos that I thought of, or some other, whatever else videos that I've kind of thought of, plus the Disney videos that I keep doing. So I thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you have a nice rest of your day. And, just comment on if you think of something that would be like your crest. And no, don't make it like you're being a jerk. It has to be a positive trait, not something that makes you put down others. That is not a crest. Nope. Something that helps you encourage others or helps bring something good out in others. So, bye. Now, don't plan a vacation there. I'm not even sure where it is. But when I first saw it, I was so scared. I was so nervous. I was so cute.